morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we've got Venusaur V coming! How cool is that? And we knew we were getting Venusaur V. We were shown a little bit of a hint. It seemed fairly unequivocal that it would in fact be a Venusaur V. And it's kind of cool. Now, our translation comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet. Obviously, should be used to hearing that by now. And starting off, we got 220 HP, which is almost as high as Pokemon V Go. I've told you a million times about Zamazenta, one of the few that has 230, but 220 is still high. But like so many of these new Pokemon V, because I'm saying this in almost every video, the retreat cost is free, which means no extra HP with buff padding, but no free retreat with Air Balloon. It will bring you down to a retreat cost of 1, but that's not what we want, gosh darn it. And let's face it right now, Welder is a problem for grass decks. Welder is a big problem for grass decks. Welder means that fire decks are good, and this gives up 2 prizes and is weak to fire. Please do bear in mind that this is a pretty bad weakness. As for being a grass Pokemon, you're really not hitting much relevant for weakness. I mean, the Pokemon I see most often that is relevant and weak to grass is probably Stonjourner. I suppose you could argue Excadrill. And Excadrill is a bit of a niche deck around at the moment, but Excadrill's only got 140 HP, so the weakness is rarely going to be terribly relevant. And you've got healing stuff, except you don't really, because Shaymin is rotating out, and Life Forest Prism Star is rotating out. Netball, that we would use to search for this, or a basic grass, is rotating out. We're still left with Turffield Stadium, which will let you search an evolved grass Pokemon, and you're probably going to be playing this with Rillaboom, so yay! Oh, and while we're here, there is that Rillaboom that accelerates 2 grass energy from the deck. If you're playing this, you're playing it with Rillaboom. But what does it do? Well, according to the lovely Antoine Boulet, the first attack for 3 energy, 2 grass, 1 colourless, does 80 damage, and poison, and sleep. Oh. Yeah, we can use this, ladies and gentlemen. We can actually use this. These Pokemon Vs are turning out a lot better than I expected, seeing that they were in these pre-made decks that usually aren't good at all. You see, 2 grass, 1 colourless, 80 damage, poison and sleep. Now the 80 damage isn't very much, but the plan for this attack is you're not really just attacking once. Sure, every so often you'll come up against something like a Cinccino, and that Cinccino has 90 HP, so you hit it for 80, poison kicks in, he gone! But most of the time you're going to be hitting a couple of times. And we've got tricks to make both poison and sleep better. For sleep, we're really looking at Slumbering Forest. It's a stadium card that says your opponent must flip a double heads to recover from sleep. So if they're asleep and they flip a paltry, pathetic single heads, they're not waking up. Which means instead of your opponent having a 50% chance of waking up, they get themselves a 25% chance of waking up. And I don't know if you guys have really given this much thought. That is not a big chance of waking up. It means 3 out of 4 times they're going to sit there and remain asleep. This is awesome. This is really, really good. So now they've basically got to switch. Yes, at the moment, everybody's using a skateboard, but oh no, wait, a skateboard is rotating, so that's out. So they are going to have to switch. They can't retreat, they can't a skateboard to retreat, they've got to actually have some kind of switch. And they're likely to be stuck in the active asleep for a little while. And while that's going on, they're taking poison damage. Now, poison damage is 1 damage counter between turns, but it is 1 after your turn, 1 after theirs, 1 after your turn, 1 after theirs, etc. And the fact that they're asleep and likely to be stuck in the active for a little while makes it more likely that they're not going to be able to actually get around sleep, which is awesome, means they're likely to, well, stay asleep and then stay poisoned and keep taking that damage. But then we've got Toxicroak. And the Toxicroak that came around in Sword and Shield puts an extra 2 damage counters on poison Pokemon between turns. So that means that your opponent is taking 3 damage after your turn, 3 damage after your opponent, 3 damage after your turn, 3 damage after your opponent's, etc. And that is actually going to add up very, very quickly. like beautifully quickly. I love it. I really like this. If we didn't have Sleep plus Slumbering Forest, maybe I wouldn't feel so good about it. If we didn't have Toxicroak to put extra poison on, maybe I wouldn't feel so good about it. But we do have all of those things right now. And although the 80 damage seems a little bit low, and on the face of it, 80 for free energy is a little bit too low. But the fact of the matter is, this is going to add up very, 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 very quickly. And it's going to disrupt your opponent. And I've said many, many times, right? If you cannot get a one-hit KO, get a two-hit KO with disruption. And that's what we're working on here. There will be times your opponent has a switch, and when they've got a switch, there will be times that they can get an immediate KO and you're giving up 2 prizes. But bearing in mind, even when they switch, they've either got to have a way to get their Pokemon back in the active, or they've got to have a way to bring a Pokemon from the bench to the active that is able to KO you. And a lot of the time, that's just not going to be possible. Even against fire decks, yeah, sure, they're one-hit KOing you easily, but the key is they've got to actually hit you. And you can't hit while you're asleep. There will be times this fails, and I've been advocating for a little bit of a while now that Galarian Rapidash should be taken a little bit more seriously. I mean, Jirachi's still going to be good post-rotation, but it still goes to sleep and we're not going to have a skateboard. Galarian Rapidash is the kind of thing that will shut this down. Cobalion GX would also do it if anyone's actually playing that, but most people aren't. Hey ho, it will survive the rotation though because it was in Team Up. So maybe your opponent plays something like that and shuts you down, but if not, this could be kind of brutal. And then we've got a second attack here. You add a 4th energy, 220. This Pokemon can't use Solar Typhoon during your next turn. I love that attack named Solar Typhoon. That's kind of cool. But also, this is nice. This is the same amount of damage that we're used to seeing from Rillaboom. Rillaboom V comes in and does, for 4 energy, 220 damage. With the same amount of HP as a grass Pokemon. Same retreat cost as well, incidentally, but I would say a much worse first attack. You do get to put 2 basic grass Pokemon on the bench though, so it's not terrible. But Rillaboom does 220 and 30 to itself. This does 220 and can't attack next turn, but it doesn't self-damage, which means it's more difficult for your opponent to get a KO next turn. Now, the one thing we do need to remember about Rillaboom V is that there is such a thing as Rillaboom V Max. And Rillaboom V Max will, for 4 energy still, 4 energy, 130 damage, discarding up to 3 grass energy, doing 50 more for each one discarded. So if you do discard 3 energy, you do 280, which is higher. And 280 means you one-hit KO stuff like Arceus and Dialga and Palkia and Reshiram and Charizard. So make no mistake about it, there is a huge difference between 220 and 280. But this 220 will still get a one-hit KO on a Zacian, and other than those few very select 230 HP Pokemon V, you will KO any Pokemon V, and you will get pretty much any single prize Pokemon out there. You won't get VMAXs or Tag Teams, sorry, but there's still a lot of damage for a 2 prize Pokemon. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think you're ever really hitting 220 here. I think the reality is what you do is you hit with a first attack, put them to sleep while being poisoned, they take a minimum 100 damage, 80 from the attack, 20 because 10 after your turn for poison, 10 after their turn for poison, and Slumbering Forest means they've only got a 25% chance of waking up. Then when you hit them for 220, they actually go up to 320, and the poison puts them up to 330, and unless it's a Snorlax V Max, or something equally beefy, they are going down. And also, if they can't get out the active and they're still asleep, that will actually be KO'd by poison coming into your turn, which is literally the perfect situation. This is really nice. And this is why you play it over Rillaboom. Let's be clear, Rillaboom V Max does give you a good reason to play Rillaboom V, but if you're not playing with the V Max, I much prefer Venusaur to Rillaboom. I think it's a better card. I think the first attack is really nice and will set you up so you basically KO anything. Bearing in mind, you use Rillaboom's ability once and you attach from your hand, that is the first attack paid for. You then add one more energy next turn, that's the second attack paid for, and essentially, once you attack with this, one of two things is going to happen. Either your opponent has a switch or some way to get out the active without retreating, or you will KO them next turn. Unless it's something like a Snorlax. Come on, there's very few Pokemon. And this is nice. And even if they get out the active, they've still got to have some way to come and get you. I love this. I'm giving it 4 Wassies. I'm a fan. Come at me, bro. Come at me. Seriously, come at me in the comment section. But, you know, tell me what you think about the card and be nice, would ya? But do go nuts. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.